In PMBOK Guide 6th edition, we have 10 knowledge areas. Knowledge areas can be visualized as specialized skills, knowledge of a particular direction, particular domain. Like we have a scope management knowledge area. This knowledge area primarily focuses on scope related processes like collecting requirements from individuals or eliciting eliciting needs. Collect requirement is something which is not light in a business analysis is word, but still PMBOK talks about a term called collecting requirement, but it is more about focusing on capturing requirement, focusing on controlling the scope, validating what we have developed, is it matching with what we wanted to do. So all the things which are related with the scope goes into a scope management knowledge area. Similarly, we have other knowledge areas which focuses on one particular dimension. Now, it makes sense to have a brief idea about all these 10 knowledge areas. And let's start with the first knowledge area. You may see a number 4 because this is how the chapter numbers are designed in PMBOK Guide 6th edition, because it starts from the 4th one and these numbers are coming, which makes it 100% compliant with what is written in PMBOK Guide 6th edition. But this is the first knowledge area out of the 10. Project integration management. You have learned about project life cycle. We spoke about project life cycle gives a starting till ending and full coverage to a project. Project integration management binds the complete life cycle. It's like you have multiple knowledge areas, time, scope, cost, risk, but ultimately they need to integrate with each other. It doesn't make sense to just to write or just to elicitate one particular requirement, but not to develop it, not to manage risk related to it, not to estimate cost related to it, not to talk about stakeholders from that particular requirement perspective. Now all these things are done in a different knowledge areas, but ultimately they need to come together and work in a tandem, and that is the goal of project integration management. It's like all remaining 9 knowledge areas related activities get integrated. If you think of a big project having 200 people, and each project, the 200 people might be divided in 20-30 people's teams, and you may have a centralized group which integrates the work of all those 200 people and give them an integrated view of the project. So that group, the activities that group does primarily will be more towards project integration management. They integrate the work of cost accountants, they integrate the work of time guys, they integrate the work of risk related things, they integrate the work of change related things, and everything they do it by managing the knowledge area project integration management. Now this particular columns represents process groups. We spoke about process groups in the previous video: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. So in project integration management, we do have a process in initiating, which is more about starting up the project, develop project charter. Then we have a process related to develop project management plan, planning process group. Now the develop project management plan is more like a binding planning of remaining knowledge areas. So it initiates, it talks about which particular life cycle, what kind of a tailoring we need to take into the project. We do a first level of strategization for planning, which starts from here, and after that the respective knowledge area does their individual planning, scope management planning, risk management planning, cost management planning. They get done in the respective knowledge area. Finally, we bind them together and we develop the integrated plan, which is like a developed project management plan. Then we have some executing related processes, direct and manage project work. All this planning get integrated here. Finally, you need to do the work, and doing the work and managing them as we go along is something to do with direct and managed project work. Then we have a managed project knowledge. This is something new, got added in PMBOK Guide 6th edition. Now since you are giving an exam in 6th edition, you don't have to worry about new or old, but it makes sense to think about it from a perspective point of view. Earlier, we used to talk about lesson learned once we are done with one phase of the project, or even sometime when we are done with the project. Now PMBOK has acknowledged, the industry has acknowledged that now we need to learn every day. We can't have a process in the closing area for managing the knowledge. It has to be along with doing. So we have a managed project knowledge as a one more process coming in executing. Then we have a process for monitoring and controlling, integrated monitoring and controlling for all the knowledge areas, plan versus target, giving the integrated view to the stakeholders. And then we have a perform integrated change control, which is more about managing the integrated change across the project management, knowledge areas across the project. And finally, closing the project or phase. So this particular knowledge area startups the project and handles the planning and executing, monitoring and controlling, integrates all of them, and finally leads to the closing of the project or phase. That's the specialization of project integration management knowledge area. You can see that this is the only knowledge area which has processes in all process groups, because this is how it provides an envelope for all project related activities. It is like a binder for all project management knowledge areas. Project scope management, I already spoke about it. It's more to do with scoping. We start with the planning, we talk about collecting requirement, defining the scope, and creating something called work breakdown structure, which is like a pictorial representation of the complete scope. And this all primarily focuses on the planning, and the execution get done in the remaining executing processes of other knowledge areas. Once the work is done, we need to validate the scope. And finally, we also have a process to control the scope, which ensures that the project is working towards what is inside the project and figuring out the variances, if any. Then we have the knowledge area, project schedule management. It used to be a project time management. Why I am giving the previous references? Because you may end up encountering some material on internet where the previous terminologies are used. So do keep in mind, in PMBOK Guide 6th edition, we do use something called project schedule management. Primarily dealing with scheduling the activities and controlling the activities. It has many processes. Rather than going into each processes at this point of time, I am giving you a brief idea. It has many processes which primarily helps us to create a schedule, a time plan for a given project. And then we have a process which helps us in controlling those schedules against those planned activity, figuring out the variances and working on them. Project cost management, all about costing, planning for cost, estimating the cost, estimating the budget, determining the budget, and finally controlling the cost as per the plan. So primarily accountant knowledge area. This is something like timekeeper knowledge area, project schedule management. Project cost management is like an accountant knowledge area. Then quality management. It's all about planning for quality, ensuring that quality is taken care when we are really doing the work, manage quality, and then finally controlling the quality by doing actual versus target analysis. All quality theories, quality principles we end up discussing when we talk about project quality management knowledge area. As a project manager, you need to be a project manager, not a quality manager, but you need to have a good grip on various quality management tools and techniques so that you can help and facilitate your team adhering to the quality goals of the project. Project resource management. Earlier it used to be a human resource management, but now it is just a generic resource management because it takes humans and non-human resources as well, and it has processes which is more about planning the resource management, estimating activity resources, whatever activities we find out in a project schedule, we estimate what type of resources are needed, acquiring those resources, developing the teams, managing the teams, and finally controlling the resources, their actual versus target. All human resource and non-human resource related resource management is focused in this particular knowledge areas. So you might be getting an idea that in general these knowledge areas gives us a dimension of a project management tools and techniques, knowledge and skills which is relevant for running the projects well. Communication management, all about managing the communication, all about planning the communication. So we plan the communication, we talk about who should get what type of report, who should get in which particular format, what frequency, and then we really do that. We send out those reports and communication, and finally we monitor. Are we really following our plan? Is the stakeholder getting the weekly report week on week? If they are not getting a weekly report, they can raise an issue, and etc. etc. So this is all about project communication management. So I need to sit down because we have long photo to cover, but yeah, it's an interesting one. Project risk management. It's all about managing risk. What is risk? It's something an uncertain event. which may happen, and if it happens, it has an impact on our projects. So project risk management has processes in planning process groups talking about risk management planning, identifying risk, doing some assessment of those risks, ranking them, which is dangerous and which is very dangerous, and then thinking of how do we take care of those risks. So these are the processes which does that. Finally, we need to apply those responses because we have thought of some ideas to take care of those risks, and then we monitor them regularly. Project risk management, it will come a little bit far because we will go in the sequence when we start learning about project management using PMBOK Guide 6th edition. Project procurement management, it's more about taking help from someone else. You figure it out that this is something we can't do, this is something we need an external help, this is something we need to outsource. So you may want to outsource part of the work, and for that you have this particular knowledge area. You start talking about planning those procurements, you do that procurement, you hire those consultants or resources which is needed, and finally you give them a bill, you control the procurement, you ensure that you get the work which those parties are expected to do, and you do it by controlling the procurement. The 10th knowledge area is more about stakeholder management. Rather than it's more about stakeholder engagement. All the processes in it talks about stakeholder engagements, and it's like working with people. In today's environment, the requirements are changing very dynamically, and the engagement from the stakeholders is very, very critical for project success. So this knowledge area talks about identify the people who are really getting affected by this project. Identify the stakeholders, plan their stakeholder engagement. How do you want to engage them? How do you want to meet them? How do you want to keep them on the same page? And then you do that, manage stakeholder engagement, and you monitor is it this strategy working out or not working out. And this completes the quick overview of our 10 knowledge areas, and we have looked into some of the processes to get a feeling of these 10 particular knowledge areas. Don't try to memorize them at this point in time. If you don't understand some percentage of this video, it's okay. It will become more and more clear as we go forward and we study about each knowledge area in detail. Do you want to finish your PMP certification in the first attempt? Many aspirants are worried about not making up in the first attempt. Now, if your answer is that yes, you want to get it in the first attempt, you should consider enrolling to our PMP online program. We have videos prepared for the complete PMBOK guide, and these videos not only explains the basic concepts, they get into the details of the fundamentals of those concepts. And that knowledge will help you in getting your certification done faster, and that too in your first attempt. You can find more information about our program at our website, and you can also find the detailed link of our program in the description section of this video.